Earlier in the year, we talked a little about weed control in alfalfa, but what can a farmer do at this time of the year to make his alfalfa crop better?
Well, you know, Brian, I got a little story to tell you. I was talking to a large hog producer, and so they have a lot of manure to deal with every year. And I said, you know, what's your crop rotation and where are you putting the manure and this kind of thing? He said, I love having alfalfa in my rotation because, man, does that just soak up the nutrients. It just takes so many nutrients out of the ground. I can put all kinds of manure on that ground because we need all the nutrition we can get. And it got me thinking, you know, I think of a lot of guys that raise alfalfa in our area. How much fertilizer are they really putting on?
Well, you know, this is the same discussion we have with almost every crop, especially the crops not named corn, because it seems like every farmer fertilizes heavy for corn, and then it's almost like we forget about it for the other crops. I mean, wheat doesn't get near the attention that corn does, soybeans especially. Alfalfa for sure doesn't get the attention. So we always advise you, do soil sampling. Do plant tissue analysis and fertilize for an appropriate crop. And how you know how much fertility you need is you can just go to, we've got a free Ag PhD smartphone or iPad app that you can download, and you just punch in your crop and what your yield goal is. So like in the case of alfalfa, it's how many tons are you going to produce, and let's just see how many nutrients are we removing from the soil.
Well, when you think about alfalfa, what are you doing with it? You're selling it to somebody with livestock, or you're using it yourself, but you're using it for feed, because it has a lot of nutritional value.
Right.
Where do those nutrients come from? They either come from applied nutrition to the field, or they come from the soil. And if you're continually taking it out of the soil, you're going to be left with a nutrient depleted soil out there that isn't going to raise great crops afterwards. So that's one big concern that I've got. So in between cuttings, you have a great opportunity to get more fertilizer out there in one form or another, just to get things going and perk that crop up and get a better, more nutritious cutting the next time you go.
The other thing that we often talk to alfalfa producers about is right after you're cutting, make sure you're spraying insecticide, or for that matter, 7 days before you're cutting. It seems like there are always bugs in the alfalfa field, and if you don't think there are, at least go take a look. So you say, well, I don't want to invest money in insecticide every time I go out and make a cutting. Just go out with a sweep net and just see if you've got bugs. If you don't, great. But boy, if you have bugs out there, especially things like leafhoppers, alfalfa weevils, grasshoppers, things like that, I mean, things that can really take a lot of tonnage from you, that's not good. And not only do they take tonnage, they also, in just the feeding that they do, they also can inject disease. So that's an additional problem.
Well, and insecticide isn't this huge investment anymore. It used to cost quite a few dollars per acre.
Yeah.
Now, in a lot of cases, it may cost $2 or $3 an acre. Well, that's no big deal. And you think about the value of what your hay is worth, wow. That's a pretty easy way to get a good return on investment.
Now, I mentioned how they can inject disease. Even if they don't inject disease into your plant, like the leafhoppers will, for example, they can just open it up. In other words, there are little cuts, little openings in your plant, and that's where disease can get in. So a lot of alfalfa producers are actually starting to use fungicide now, and I know it may seem a little weird. You may never thought about that in your alfalfa, but there is a lot of headline and other fungicides that are getting used with pretty good success.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. When you think about alfalfa hay and you're looking at that, you want to keep a lot of leaves on those plants. Well, what happens with your plants? Most of the time, those lower leaves are all diseased and they fall off and they've got no value for you. If you can treat early in the cutting, you know, right after that regrowth gets started a little bit, treat those lower leaves and protect them from disease. And yes, that's where you're going to see a lot of it, is in the bottom, 6 inches to a foot of your alfalfa. You'll see a lot of that disease. Well, if you get some nice regrowth on there and you can hold all those leaves, think about how much more nutrition you're going to have, what your relative feed value is going to be, and what you're going to get for that alfalfa hay. It's going to be tremendous. It does make a lot of sense. The other thing about alfalfa that I think is really cool is you're going to get multiple cuttings. So you're going to get 2, 3, 4 cuttings depending on where you're at. And when you're getting multiple cuttings, you've got a chance to try new things several times during the year and learn from them. Like with our corn and soybean crops that we're talking about all summer, we only get one chance to do it right. We've got one date to plant. We've got one shot at killing the weeds. We've got to wait a whole nother year before we can try something different. With alfalfa, you get multiple times during the year to basically give yourself a report card and see if you're doing the right things and making smart decisions. And you know what? Then, okay, you take a cutting and now you get to do it all over again. And I know it's a lot of work. I know you stay busy all summer with alfalfa, but you just have to keep out there and keep after it. There's tremendous profit potential this year, and there's a great chance for you to do things right.
Well, the other thing, Darren, as you were talking about all these things you can do in alfalfa, I was just thinking about something that's a little bit outside the box compared to normal thinking on the farm, and that's biological products. We've been discussing this for the last few years, plant growth hormones, those kind of things. We've used personally on some alfalfa has been Mega Grow, and that has had some success. We've also used AC97 that's got hormones in it as well as some fertilizer. I mean, there are a number of different things that you could try in terms of this biological plant growth hormone thing on your farm.
Well, the other thing, Brian, is just changing up the timing when you're cutting that hay. Now, I know a lot of big operations will use, a date on the calendar and say every 28 days, or maybe a few days here or there, depending on what your growing conditions are. But every 28 days, we're going to cut alfalfa. Well, that's good, and it's nice to have a plan in place. But for some guys, it's, I'll cut it when I get around to it and when the weather looks decent, and all of a sudden your alfalfa is in full bloom and your feed value and digestibility could be on the decline. So just paying more attention to, all right, when am I going to cut, and try to be very precise with that to maximize the value of that hay. That's a big deal, and it could be a huge moneymaker for your farm.
Well, we've thrown out a lot of things here, and don't get us wrong. I mean, we're not trying to talk you into spending $1 zillion on alfalfa or anything else. All we're ever trying to do is give you some ideas to think about, things that you can try on your farm and say, oh yeah, I like these 6 things. That's really helping my production. These couple of things, I tried them, didn't really have a lot of success on my farm, okay? But at least we want to get you outside your comfort zone a little bit, try some new things, because we want to see you make more money and do better with your alfalfa, just like with any crop.
Well, you will do a lot better, especially in pasture and rangeland, if you can control our Weed of the Week. We'll give you some tips coming up later in the show.